What you wear to the airport can either make your life easier or it can cause a stressful, uncomfortable, and even embarrassing experience. That's because there are certain clothes that are definitely not TSA friendly, and if you wear any of these clothes through airport security, you're asking for trouble. The first thing never to wear in airport security are pants that are too big. That's because most airports ask you to remove your belt if it has a metal buckle. And then when you're passing through the body scanners, you have to have your hands over your head. So unless you want to be standing in the body scanner with your pants around your ankles, it's best to wear something that will stay up even when you take your belt off. You can save even more time by using pants that don't require a belt at all, or using a belt with a plastic clasp. In a second, I'll show you how not wearing the right pants could actually get you kicked off your flight. Next are metal piercings, rings, necklaces, bracelets, or watches that can trigger alarms and lead to extra screening. It's important to mention that stuff like this won't get you in trouble per se, but it will lead to extra attention and extra time spent getting inspected. This adds stress if you're already running late, or if you have valuables like your laptop, for example, sitting out in the bin unattended as hordes of other travelers pass by grabbing their stuff. One thing to know about metal piercings is that small ones are unlikely to cause problems because the sensitivity of the metal detectors in the airports are usually set to only look for bigger, more threatening items. But if you have tons of piercings or big metal pieces, those could set off the alarm. Then you'll either get a full pat down or you'll have to remove the piercings if you're able to. According to the TSA, this can be done in private, although I found some older news stories of people who were forced to remove them in public, and it was super embarrassing. Also, if you wear a wedding ring or expensive jewelry, you usually don't need to worry. These shouldn't be a problem as long as they're gold, silver, or platinum, and they're not those cheaper magnetic metals. And if you do happen to be asked to remove anything expensive, make sure to put it in some sort of secure zipped pocket before putting it in the bin, instead of putting it in the bin all loosey-goosey and exposed. Also note that you may hear conflicting advice on what you can and can't wear through airport security. That's because not all airports use the same security equipment and technology.
Every airport has different machines, so if you're not listening, it's going to delay the process for you.
For example, some airports use millimeter wave body scanners, while others still use the traditional metal detectors. So if you're planning to go through an unfamiliar airport and you don't know what their security procedures are, it's better to play it safe with what you wear. Okay, so I totally understand why people make this next TSA close mistake. It's because airlines are getting stingier and stingier with their luggage fees, so people have to start taking things into their own hands. One way to do this is by wearing cargo pants with tons of different pockets and then cramming those pockets full of stuff so they can save space and not have to pay for those luggage fees. In theory, this is brilliant, but in practice, not so much. That's because when you get to the TSA line, you can't really take off your pants, which means that you'll have to unload every single pocket into those bins to send it through the X-ray machine. This not only holds up the line, but it's also just stressful to have all your stuff piled out in the open when you're going through that hectic security line. Plus, you're just more likely to forget something in one of your million different pockets, which will require the agent to have to search you extra, which is something I'd rather avoid. One genius alternative to cargo pants is to use something that still has tons of pockets, but something that's easy to quickly take off and put in the bin. For example, I now use my Scotty vest on almost all of my flights, and they were kind enough to sponsor this video. Scotty Vest is a brand that specializes in pocket science, which basically means that they spent the past 20 years experimenting on how to create the perfect vest or jacket that has 20, 30, and sometimes even 40 pockets. They carefully design their pocket science clothes to have balance, which means that even if you fill them all up, they still don't look awkward and bulky or lopsided. And even if you don't plan on cramming every single one of these pockets full, it's still just convenient to have the pockets to stay organized while you go through the airport and on the plane. For example, I like to keep my phone in one interior chest pocket, my passport on the other side, my wallet, Kindle, and power bank in the lower interior pockets that are impossible to pickpocket, by the way, and my AirPods connected to the built-in carabiner so I don't lose them. When I go through airport security, I just slip the vest off, throw it in the bin, and I don't have to worry about my things getting lost or stolen. Plus, my wife Diane keeps telling me how fancy and handsome I look compared to the plain black t-shirt that I wear every day, So that alone sold me on it. They have some other pretty cool secret pockets built into their clothes as well, so make sure to check them out if you want to feel like a secret spy. And to get 20% off, use the link in the description and then send a message to their chat saying that Project Untethered sent you. That's to make sure that only the cool people get the discount. This next airport clothes mistake will not only draw extra attention from the TSA, which is something you definitely want to avoid, but it also actually could get you kicked off your flight by the airline staff itself. And that is wearing anything that could be considered controversial or offensive. This includes shirts with potentially offensive prints on them, or even just saggy pants or clothes that show too much skin. There was actually a news story many years ago about Billy Joe Armstrong from the band Green Day, who got kicked off of his Southwest flight because his pants were sagging too low and he wouldn't pull them up after the airline attendant asked him to. There was also college football player Deshaun Marmon, who was not only kicked off his flight but also arrested for refusing to pull up his pajama pants when the airline staff said that he was showing too much undies. To be fair, these issues seem to be from not obeying the flight crew and not so much the clothes themselves. But still, better to keep your outfits appropriate to avoid problems. By the way, if you've ever had a problem in TSA or in the airport in general, share it in the comments below. It can help other people watching, and I may even include your story in a future video someday. Now let's talk about footwear. You want to avoid anything that's a pain to take on and off, because that's exactly what you have to do when going through airport security, at least in most airports. The last thing you want is to hold up the line unstrapping your complicated boots or struggling to get them back on when you're running late for your flight. I recommend either slip-on shoes or sneakers that are easy to take off and put back on. Also, unless you want to walk through the airport barefoot, which may or may not be gross to you depending on your level of germaphobness, make sure to wear socks. I usually only travel with one pair of shoes and one pair of these Jesus sandals. That means in the airport, I use my black sneakers tied loosely so they're easy to take on and take off, and this might look different depending on your wardrobe and setup. The exception to all this would be for kids under the age of 12 or seniors over 75 who don't have to take off their shoes. The airport security line is not meant to be a fashion model runway. If you like to wear exceptionally poofy or baggy clothes in the name of fashion, the TSA might find this suspicious and require extra searches. And along the same lines, if you're using multiple layers, make sure that your interior layer is modest. Because if you're trying to be comfy, for example, and you're wearing a big bulky sweatshirt but with nothing underneath, what do you think will happen when TSA asks you to take that sweatshirt off? The same goes for that style that some girls wear with those blazers and then those revealing bras underneath. You always have to think about how you'll feel if the airport security asks you to take off your outer layer. Speaking of bras, I'm no expert in this department, but some women report that some metal underwire bras have set off the alarms. This comes down to how sensitive the metal detectors are set, but it wouldn't hurt just to use a plastic underwire or a wireless bra on travel day. Believe it or not, wearing the wrong clothes isn't the only way to piss off the TSA and have a nightmare experience going through airport security. There are actually some other small, seemingly innocent things that can cause you a big problems in TSA, and I cover all those in this video. I highly recommend watching it because the majority of travelers make at least one of the mistakes on this list, and they usually don't realize it until it's too late. Like, subscribe, do the things. Love you. Bye-bye.